What is the best thing about being BFFs with Mr. Andrew Cohen?
Wow. Well, there's a lot. I mean, you have to contextually, it's always important that, Andy and I met in 1994. I was dating his best friend at the time. And it was a 3-year relationship, of which the first year was typical of like Andy being a little bit bitchy towards me. The second year, we sort of like sussed each other out because both of us were over the person. And then the third year was like the exit for the two of us, and we clicked. And we call the year of 1997 the year of Brandy, Bruce and Andy, and we just exploded. Andy is fiercely loyal, extremely fun. He's and he's very loyal to all his friends. Like Andy has the ability, as busy as he is, to his net, which is wide from high school to college, he keeps in touch with everyone. Being the best friend, I've never had a best friend like Andy. He is truly, he's been there in my good times, in my bad times. We could speak for hours every day. Like we'll look, as the phones tell you, and he's like, ooh, like we did, we're on an hour, 20 minutes right now. We have endless things to say to each other. He's the best girlfriend. He's the best friend. So there's almost too many things to say, but but ultimately I feel safe like I've never felt safe in a friendship. And I feel like he's family to the end. And like finding your mate in life, finding a friendship like that it's a rare thing. And so I handle it. We both, we can say anything. We can argue with each other. We can laugh. We can get into trouble together. But at the end of the day, he's only been a true support, as I have for him. And watching him become a father and being a part of that experience and helping him be inspired because he saw me become a father. And it's a magical friendship.
Well, you are the godfather to Benjamin Cohen. So did Andy turn to you for fatherly advice?
He did. I mean, what he saw was, one, he just watched. So when I was 40, I called him up and I go, Andy, I have something to tell you. I was living in DC at the time, working at the Palm, because that was the corporate office. And he's like, don't tell me you're having a baby. And I said, yes, because he wanted to do it at the same time. But that decade in my life was about becoming a father. And that decade in Andy's life was about exploding into his career. So it was, we just were, so he's the godfather of Ava. And I think he watched a lot and he saw, and and then as it got closer to him, there was advice. And there oftentimes I will differ with him and I'll say, that's not what I would be doing right now, or that's what I would do. And he listens. So yeah, he does ask. He asks.
I know you're a big Housewives fan. You've been open about that before, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do you get spoilers from Andy on what's to come?
I do. I'm not. One of the things that's happened is I have pulled back from the Housewife franchises because it's like, all right, and I get very anxious when I watch them, and I'm like, can't watch them all. He will say, what he does is he's like, okay, Bruce, you gotta watch episode 11, Dinner Party Part 2 at Kathy Hilton's house. You need to see that, or you need to see so and so in New York, or he'll give me like an Erica Jane thing. But not so much because, he's like, if I was truly immersed and knew everybody, yes, I think he would. But I respectfully keep a little distance there.
Do you think there should be, it doesn't even have to be on Bravo, but just like, Logo did the show, The A-List, back in the day. It wasn't really the exact same thing. It was supposed to be like the Gay Housewives, but it really, truly wasn't. It wasn't, to me, like self-actualized. It was about like a bunch of guys going to Fire Island, like, it's not really Housewives. Do you think there should ever be just like an all gay male, like, fully actualized, like, here you are, maybe you could be on, you have a family and just like people with like a full 360 of a life?
Well, this is what I think. I think that, many years ago, because I'm now based in Beverly Hills, Andy said, God damn it, you are a Real Housewife of Beverly Hills. And you should be the first gay Real Housewife on this franchise. Because he'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I just ran into Lisa Vanderpump at Barney's. What are you doing now? Oh, I just got a facial. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm in a cryo fuel thing. He's like, oh, I'm at Neil Lane's looking at, Neil Lane looking at jewelry for a show. And he's like, he'd freak out. And so, of course, we like kind of just pitched it out to, I had the Palm at the time. I was like, oh, this would be good for business. Brian was like, if you want to get a divorce, go for it. So I was like, oh my God, that could be season 1 with me, like epic Hollywood divorce type of thing. This is where we go. So I think that has to be somewhere in his head. We talked about it long enough, and I think people are ready to see that sort of dynamic in with the women. In regard to like I don't know. I mean, I don't really think so. I think, and maybe there's something weird in that, but I feel like I don't know if it would work in the same way for some reason. I think it would be a little bit different, though. I think, the gay best friends that come on are fun, but I do think there's room now to put a real self-actualized gay person who's married, who has a family, who has business, and on the show and interacting with these women. I mean, that would be interesting because a male energy with them, gay or straight, is always interesting. And I think a gay guy, there'd be some good stuff.
You would be the perfect Beverly Hills housewife. I would have to agree with that.
Isaac Mizrahi called him the other day and said, why is Bruce Bozzi not a housewife of New York? And Andy was like, New York, Beverly Hills. And he was like, what do you mean Beverly Hills? He's so New York. He's New York. He's like, you're right. Beverly Hills aren't, but it's not going to happen.
I don't want you to get divorced over it.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of Kathy Hilton, listen, way to start with a bang on Lunch with Bruce.
Right. Well, let's start with Jennifer Aniston.
Right. Jennifer Aniston, Daniel Craig, and Kathy Hilton. You're like 3 for 3 at this point.
Know.
Not that I doubted you. I mean, it's Sirius XM and it's the real
Sirius
thing here.
They've been so wonderful. So when Andy basically, in 2016, Andy, I was at the Palm and he goes, we did an episode of Deep and Shallow. So Deep and Shallow literally is like, you go deep, you go shallow. We were sitting at the Palm. We went from a real subject to looking at, checking out a hot guy to, oh my God, Goldie Hawn is sitting over there with Bob Daly. Like, you know what I mean? And then he was like, I think this is a show, Lunch with Bruce. So there was a slow jam in like 2017. And then he said, if you really want this to get some legs, you have to commit. So each Friday people know that they're going to get there. So, okay. So from 2016 to now, we went into quarantine. We did Quarantine with Bruce, which was just like this, you and I speaking. So the food went away, which was really a fun element of the show because the ambient noise, the food, the booze, we'd get drunk. Sarah Paulson and I doing shots of tequila. Andrew Reynolds and I like getting smashed before he was getting on but we were talking real stuff because to me, it's about a conversation, like a real conversation. People have something to say. And it got to the point where I was like, Andy, like, what are we going to, like, where is this going to go? Like, it either has to go next level or, I wanted to take it in a podcast mode. And he dropped the hint that potentially Sirius was going to be launching a podcast platform. And so if I could just be patient, which I was, and then it happened. And when it was conclusively happening, I thought, okay, there are certain people I haven't pivoted to ask because you don't get, you gotta, and you want to launch big.